To start, we're going to give you a short video about Seed, and then I'll move into an introduction to the webinar and introduce Gillian and a little bit about Seed. So please enjoy this short video whilst people come in.
How do you ensure your business stays ahead of the competition? Do you know which manufacturing technologies and techniques are available to help you grow your business or improve your production methods? Are you able to access these easily, including free skills training for your employees? All this and more is available through the Advancing Manufacturing Cluster Builder Programme, a partnership project between Scottish Government, Scottish Enterprise and Highlands and Islands Enterprise, set up to help small and medium-sized businesses access the support they need to grow Scotland's manufacturing capabilities. Part funded by the European Regional Development Fund and delivered through Seed, we can help you collaborate with manufacturing businesses, connect with academic research, access the free support available through NMIS and the key economic development agencies in Scotland. We can also connect you with the 12 Advancing Manufacturing Challenge Fund projects, which offer advice, consultancy expertise, training and access to state-of-the-art manufacturing equipment for product testing and development. Let's make sure Scotland's manufacturers continue to compete on the world stage now and in the future.
I just want to welcome you all to this webinar called Funding for Growth in Engineering Innovation. It's the second of our 2022 webinar series, and it follows an excellent presentation from Ernst & Young last week, where we looked at what happened at COP26 and how businesses will be required to prepare a net zero transition plan as we strive to combat global warming. We'll be doing other webinars and events soon, and some on the theme of sustainability, including a look at the importance of engineering and robotics in helping the agricultural sector to transition to a zero carbon future. We're building an excellent portfolio of events, and next month we'll be looking at sustainability in design and life, or design for life, developing your brand, how to develop skills at a time where there seems to be a huge demand for skilled people and few qualified to do the job. A webinar on decommissioning offshore oil and gas, something on asset management with EDF at Torness, and for those of you with a more academic interest, something on management strategy from the University of Strathclyde. But today we're really pleased to welcome Gillian Fleming, an investment associate from Caro Development Partners. Gillian's probably well known to many of you in Scotland who are of my vintage. She's held multiple board roles and acted as an enterprise creation manager at the University of West of Scotland. She's held many other industry-facing academic posts, and some of you may have seen the press articles on Gillian's latest venture in supporting Mint Ventures, a woman-led business angel investment club. But we're not going to talk about that specifically this morning. And last autumn, Seed met with Gillian at the YCF annual conference, and we talked about how Seed's attempting to support the Scottish manufacturing recovery plan, how we'd previously looked at crowdfunding and how crowdfunding might be used to support innovation in the engineering sector, and that we'd agreed with Scottish Enterprise to look at the use by SMEs of different financial instruments for business improvement and growth. My colleague David McGregor, who unfortunately can't be with us on this webinar, he's organising a series of case studies, and he'll be promoting what he's been doing over the next 2 months. So please drop him a note if this interests you, or you've got an example of where you've invested in business yourself. We thought that we should focus on risk investment too, and we're particularly pleased to welcome Gillian and Caro, a VC with a positive attitude to risk investment, to come and talk to us. Before we invite Gillian to take over, as usual, I'd like to start off with a short outline of Seed for those of you that have never been to a Seed event before, and tell you that Seed works to solve the operational issues raised by our member companies, and how we do it will depend on the problem that we're asked to look at. For example, most of you who are not members will know Seed for the free-to-all events like this one that we offer on a regular basis, but it's not all Seed has to offer. If you're a Seed member, we'll engineer ways for you to quiz other Seed members and learn from them about how they do things, and perhaps adopt the knowledge that can be gleaned from the peer-to-peer networking that we're able to facilitate. The Seed approach is that the challenge your business faces could well be similar to that felt by or already addressed by another member company. Of course, if you've got a unique problem, then we'll try to put together a one-to-one project with another member company or perhaps an academic partner to identify a solution. Some of you may know SEED from our executive education programs, including Growth 500 and the Mentoring Mix-Up. If you want to know more about these, get in touch. I'm not going to say any more about that this morning. And finally, as you've already seen from the short video we showed, in 2020 or 2019, I should say, SEED was appointed as Cluster Builder Program Manager for the Advanced in Manufacturing Cluster Builder Initiative. This was established to create a national network of regionally based initiatives to improve the innovation performance of Scotland's small and medium-sized enterprises, to adopt contemporary ways of working, and to help businesses capitalise on new economic and public sector innovation opportunities. The network is designed to complement the new National Manufacturing Institute for Scotland by providing local access to complement the support offered by NMIS, and provide support and services to ensure that SMEs, wherever they are based, are positioned to fully capitalise on advancing manufacturing opportunities presented by this resource, irrespective of location. It's free to all Scottish SMEs, so do come and ask us about it if you're an SME and you think it's something that you could benefit from. Well, I think that's enough about SEED, and it's time for Gillian. There'll be plenty of time for questions. Do ask what's on your mind. Use the chat box to ask some questions and introduce yourself to everybody that's here, and tell us your interest in the webinar. Gillian's kindly allowed us to share the presentation afterwards, and we'll do that. And we are recording the webinar, and we'll be sharing the recording too. If you don't want to be captured in the recording, perhaps it's time that maybe to sign off, and we'll share the presentation with you afterwards. Usual housekeeping rules apply. Mute yourself when you are not speaking. Turn off your camera until you've got a question. Set your phone to silent, but enjoy the presentation. Gillian, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Patrick, and thank you to SEED for the invitation to come and talk about investment today. So I'm going to start off with a little bit more storytelling, a little bit more about my background. So I actually started out my career in the power generation sector. So I worked in sales and marketing for both Aggreko and Howden Engineering. And then from there, I kind of sidestepped over to accidentally really got involved in university commercialisation, where I have worked with a number of different universities. As Patrick has mentioned, University of West of Scotland is one of them, but I really cut my teeth at Strathclyde, and that's where I got involved and addicted to helping to raise investment. So taking university projects and translating them into high growth startup companies. And then from there, I went on to do a mini MBA, a Saltire Fellowship, and that completely changed my attitude to risk. And following that, I decided that I didn't want to be a gamekeeper anymore. I wanted to be the poacher. So that's when I got moved over to the investment side of things. And I have been working with Kiro Development Partners for a couple of years now. And I also have my own angel group that specifically supports access to finance for women-led and diverse teams. But today we're here to talk all about Kiro and how Kiro is aligned with the engineering and manufacturing industry. And the backstory of Kiro is that the two founders, Roger and Keith, they actually set up a company called Henrob more than 30 years ago, and Henrob produced rivets for the automobile industry. And they had a long journey till point of exit in 2017, when they were acquired by Atlas Copco. And Keith and Roger then decided that they wanted to give back as well as invest, because they are looking for that empathetic support that they would have liked to have had on their journey. So that's how Kiro came to fruition. And maybe just jump onto the next slide. And really, as I said, we're all about supporting ambitious teams, particularly in the innovative engineering market. And we're also really keen to support companies that are looking to see what their impact is on the environment. Next slide, please. So I thought it might be useful to kick off by talking about all the different types of funding that is available out there, many of which you will know of, but I thought it would just be really useful to go through all the different options and perhaps in terms of timescales as well and the growth and development of a manufacturing or engineering company. So most people start out by asking friends and family to support where they can. You might have some friends that have sufficient capital to be able to contribute significantly. There is also, of course, grants, and most grants these days do require match funding, usually 30% minimum. There are some grants still around that are 100%, but they are few and far between. And I know of a couple of Innovate UK ones if you're a startup going through a certain process. And I understand that DASA was also is also 100% grant, but not sure where they are in terms of availability at this precise moment in time. So in order to leverage grants, you usually require some other kind of equity to do so. And that can be done a number of different ways. Of course, you've already had a seminar on crowdfunding, so I'm not going to go into that in any detail, but there's pros and cons of crowdfunding. It's really helpful with sourcing customers, potential customers. It's a lot of work, full on for at least a month or two to raise that money, and then you might end up with quite a complicated share ownership at the end of it, which could preclude further investment. But it may not, and that may be what's right for you. Angel investment is where individuals come together in groups called syndicates, or they can invest individually, but usually it's done through syndication. And that's where the really, really early stage angel investors like to come on board. They like to roll their sleeves up. They like to support and help as much as they can. So they bring expertise along with the capital. And it tends to be at the kind of what I would call pre-seed and seed. So very, very early stage investment is where angels tend to get involved. They might do a little bit of follow-on funding, and then you would maybe look for larger amounts as well. You would start to look at venture capital. And the main difference really between angel investing and venture capital is that venture capital is a managed fund. So it's a set aside fund. It's not individuals putting their hands in their pocket at the time. It's a managed fund. And in Kiro's case, this managed fund is private money. So it's not money that's managed on behalf of an insurance company or a corporate investor or a pension scheme. This is private money, which is slightly different in that it maybe has some benefits of angel investing, that they can move really quickly and fast and not be as slow as the reputation of most venture capital firms precede them. So another way that you can grow, and was the main way that Henrob actually grew, was through profit, so revenue coming back into the company, and reinvesting that in order to grow. It can be a slow growth road to success, but it also can be very successful as well. And then finally, bank loans, which tends to be what I see in this sector, is going to bank loans because sometimes it's preferable to know exactly what you're paying back per month, what the interest rates are, and just having that as clarity in your cash flow going forwards. But the issue with bank loans is, of course, that you have to be revenue generating usually in order to source a bank loan. And for many early stage companies, that's not an option, which is why they then tend to look at crowdfunding, angel investment, and venture capital. Next slide, please. So what might you use that funding for? Why would you even need venture capital? And there's many, many reasons why you might decide that now is the opportune time for growth. And that could be because you want to grow your manufacturing and sales operations. You maybe want to roll out in a different region. You might actually be a very early stage company that's still in the R&D phase, and you haven't actually finalized your prototype, your pre-production prototype. Therefore, you require investment to do that. In general, innovative product development, so diversifying your product range, might also be a reason that you want to raise significant money. One thing that Kiro are particularly interested in is the intellectual property. So Do you want to develop your intellectual property? Do you want to protect that better? Do you maybe want to have a patent family if you haven't previously considered that? So that would be another reason to bring in significant capital to really develop your IP strategy. You may well just want to expand the team to meet demand. So you need to bring new staff on board to keep up with demand. Sometimes you're in that situation where it's a chicken and egg, and until you bring in more staff, you can't build capacity, or you maybe need to update some kind of infrastructure in order to meet that demand, and you need an injection of cash to do that. And of course, diversifying geographically is another one of the main reasons that we see companies approaching us for venture capital. But the key thing with all of these is that there has to be an opportunity for significant growth. So the investor has to see at some point further down the line that they are going to get their money back and more. And I'll come on to this further in a couple of slides' time. Next. So this is an area that I think is probably going to be of most interest to those of you that are possibly considering growing and scaling, and what are the different financial options available. I hear a lot from founders the concern that they have potentially over loss of control of their company. Most companies, the founders own around about 75%, which means they make all the decisions without having to go out and seek approval from any other shareholders. But of course, that could change if, of course, you accept external investment. And I really just want to talk a little bit around equity size and what might be expected. So every deal will be different. It really depends on the amount that you're raising and what your company's valued at, and that, of course, equates to the equity share that the investors are going to have. And it's usually, by rule of thumb, and this is not written in stone, but it's usually between 20 and 40% in the VC world. And at the end of the day, this then progresses into what we call the legal documentation, the Articles of Association and the shareholders agreement. And what you will then work with your investors to draw up is what we call investor consents. And I think this is where the areas of concern are usually around is, what amount has to go through board approval, for CapEx expenditure, salaries of the senior team. These are kinds of things that an agreement will come to with the company and the investors, and it will depend very much on the amount of share ownership that they have. But I think what's really important here is to be really clear what you're looking for, because at the end of the day, all investors want the same thing. They all want the same thing, and they all want for the company to be successful. So as long as you're aligned, and I'll come back to this point over and over, as long as you're aligned, then you should be able to reach agreement on what these decision ceilings require to be. The other thing that comes up over and over again in this fear of losing control is board positions. I would say that's one of the main topics that I always get asked. Well, if you're taking an equity share in the company, what board positions are you going to require? So most investors look to be able to appoint an investor director to the board. And in the case of Kiro, what we actually do is we also bring people in and out as and when required to help, depending on what stage the company is at. So we would maybe bring in, for example, if you were reviewing your IP strategy, we would bring in our IP specialist to help and support. And it doesn't necessarily have to be at all the board meetings. It can be out with the board meetings. So we would probably look for the right to appoint an observer in addition to a non-executive director, so that we are able to bring in people as and when required. And a lot of VCs do work in this way. And also just to add that if we are bringing an investor in, then, a director in, then you have a say in that. You can help establish where are the gaps in the board at present. What skill set do you need? and this is something that you can negotiate. And also, if you have more than one investor, which is often the case, you often have co-investment deals with more than one investor, then, you know, to get them all working together and agree that maybe it's just one director that covers all the investors. And there's lots of different ways to negotiate this. So I just wanted to try and dispel some myths here about ownership and control and founders' concerns being alleviated here. The other point there is that personal guarantees, there's sometimes concern around what guarantees the founders of the company have to give, and this is just really around, you know, you warranting liability for any misrepresentations made. And that would be, you know, making sure that in your letter of disclosure, which I'll come on to later, you're just upfront about any conflicts of interest or any issues that require to be flagged up in advance. Next, please. So, what are investors looking for? And, you know, at the end of the day, all investors are looking for the same thing. They just say it in a different way. So I'm going to go through each of these areas here. Try not to take too long on this, but, you know, essentially what we are all looking for is, you know, an innovative product or service. You know, there has to be a point of pain in the marketplace that enables you to offer this product or service in a way that the needs are not being currently met. And that's the key thing. It has to be something that is going to have market share, a growing market share, and there has to be a need for it. I have seen so many pitches and presentations of inventions and developments and new opportunities that in actual fact there isn't really a need for them, and the market is being addressed quite well as it is. So there really needs to be a demand in the marketplace. The second thing that, and these aren't in any priority order, but the second thing, and possibly one of the most important things, is you, the team, the people. We're investing in you, especially at this really, really early stage. We're investing in the team more than anything. So we want to see that the team are really capable of leading. They have that vision and they have that fire in their eyes that they are going to lead this company and grow and scale this company. And the team also includes the board as well. So, you know, we want to make sure that the right people are sitting around the board table, and as I said previously, to acknowledge what the skill gaps are and perhaps what else is needed in order to take the company to the next level. Market potential, absolutely crucial. You know, there has to be a growing market there. It may well be that you're diversifying into new markets and there's new applications of your product or service, but there has to be significant market potential. And usually we look for a compounded annual growth rate of, you know, an absolute minimum of 5%, but usually more than that going forwards. The other absolute critical, and this probably relates more to early stage companies that don't yet have customers, is we have to see evidence of customer traction. So who are your customers? Who are your key customers? Are all your eggs in one basket? Are you just relying on several key customers? We look to see what that customer traction is and what's the lifetime value of those customers going forwards as well. And are you changing with changing market needs? In really early stage companies that don't have customers, what we would look for there is feedback, maybe a market report, maybe some letters of intent that if this product existed, they would buy it. So really key is customer traction. Competition. Any good company should always be aware of what their competitors are doing, and also, is there really such a thing as competitors? Because at the end of the day, most of them can become partners in some way, shape or form, even if you're producing a component of what their overall product is. There's usually options for working together or licensing in some way, but understanding your competition, the direction of travel of your competition, and that includes indirect competition as well. So quite often I hear from new company founders that they have no competition, and that's always a red flag, because there's always competition. And even if the competition is a completely different product or service because they're doing it a different way, because at at the moment this is such an early stage nascent product that it hasn't actually been adopted yet. So there is always competition, and it's really good to understand what that competition is. We look at the business model as well, and the business model can change so much. You know, there's no such thing as a stationary business plan. It's all about change and adaptation. So it may well be that your main revenue is coming from a software licensing element of a piece of hardware. So yeah, at the end of the day, we are totally flexible with the business model changing, as long as the assumptions are made and it's all flows through into your cash flow. Intellectual property that is protectable and defensible. So we would be looking to see what do you have at the moment? Is everything know-how? Is it a lot of know-how that you have? Have you trademarked your company name, your brand? Do you run on trade secrets? Do you carefully monitor and control that with your staff recruitment and exit plans? And then, of course, there's your intellectual assets, such as your branding going forwards. The name of the company becomes more important and more valuable over time as you start to gain presence in the marketplace. Next, please. So how do you approach investors? Well, that's a good question. Often it's quite difficult to find the right investor. You know, at the end of the day, a warm introduction is always much better than just applying online. So most venture capital firms will have an online application process. You can go onto the British Venture Capital Association website and have a look through their member base to see who might actually be a good fit, a good match for you. Some venture capital firms are very sector specific. Some are more stage specific, so they'll only invest at a certain round size, or a certain amount size. Some are regionally specific. So really having a look and seeing what's out there, and sometimes one of your board members might be able to help with this and make introductions, and they maybe know this landscape a little bit. But in terms of Kiro, we are specifically focusing on the engineering sector, and I'll come back to this at the end. But what's really, really, really important is doing your due diligence, so doing your detective work and making sure that it is a good match when you're approaching investors. So find out what their values are, and does that align with your values, your company's culture and values, because that is so important. As long as we're all aligned and we're all looking to achieve the same goals, then we have a common purpose to be successful. And I cannot stress enough, there's no reason why you couldn't look at who this venture capital company has invested in, and pick up the phone and ask one of their portfolio companies, how has this worked? How has the journey been? How has the support been? And in any good venture capital firm will happily make an introduction to some of their existing portfolio companies, so you can ask those questions. So whether it's an online application or a warm introduction, if it meets with the values and their investment criteria, you would then need to have the information ready to send to them. And that these days it tends to be something called a pitch deck. And the pitch deck is just really maybe 10 slides or so, where you've got your summary of your company covering all the points that I have just mentioned in the previous slide. Sometimes this is sent as a one-page investment summary document, which is, again, absolutely fine. Either or is quite happy. And then what you want for that to progress to is an introduction meeting. And then once you've had the introduction meeting and you've obviously passed the first test, the next stage is usually that you'll be invited to present and meet some of the members of the venture capital company. Next, please. So then if it gets to the stage that you've been through the whole process, you've done your due diligence, they've done a bit of their due diligence, initial due diligence, you would then be issued a term sheet. And the term sheet is a non-binding legal document that basically offers you an amount of money at a certain valuation, and there's a time scale limit on how long this is valid for. You get a chance to digest this and come back And if this is then agreed, there is potential for negotiation there. And once this is agreed, that's when the main due diligence takes place. So that's when the venture capital company will be looking for lots of support documentation. They'll be looking for market reports. They'll be looking to see your IP documentation, and they'll be looking to meet with all the key members of the team as well. So that each venture capital company goes through this either light touch or deep touch, depending on the amount and the stage that you're at. And then following successful due diligence, that will go through to the legal negotiations. So I'm not going to talk too much about this because this is probably a whole separate session. But the main documents involved in any legal deal would be updating your existing articles of association, if you are an existing company, or of course a new articles of association if of course you're a startup. And that is the legal document that must be filed at Companies House, and it covers your basic governance, how the company is going to operate, transfer of shares, etc. And then in addition to that, what you have is your shareholders agreement. So that really covers how the company is going to operate in terms of these investor consents that I mentioned previously, in terms of decision making as well. But this does not require, this is a private document. It doesn't require to be filed at Companies House. And then you'll have your letters of disclosure from the directors, where you would disclose any conflicts of interest or personal information that may affect the running of the company. So that's a quick fly through of those documents, but I'm sure that it might actually be worthwhile having a separate session on that, maybe with a legal firm that could go in more detail. Next, please. So what about investor returns then? There's lots of talk in the press about the holy grail for a unicorn, which is having a valuation of 1 billion, but that's not what most investors are looking for. What we're really looking for is to get our money back, to have our money back over a period of time. And that money back could be anything between 5 and 10 times our money back, but we do look to have it back eventually. Although we obviously invest in the understanding that it is risky and that we might never get our money back, but we do hope that to get our money back at the end of the day. And Kiro is a very patient investor because we understand how long this journey may take, and some venture capital firms might look for quicker returns. So just be careful when you're looking to be matched up with the right investor, that they're not looking for the same aligned timescale as you potentially are. But I thought it might be useful to talk a little bit here about the types of exit. So when we use the word exit, what does that really mean? Because it's quite a scary word, thinking, oh, well, that's it, the company's gone and I have no involvement in it anymore. And that's not the case at all. So there's several different kinds of exits that could happen for the investors. So the first could be that the company is sold or acquired by another company that maybe works in a related field and is looking to diversify. That doesn't mean that necessarily the management team will be completely changed out. There still could be roles for the original founders going forwards there, but it helps the company to grow and scale and maybe provides access to other markets as well. There's of course what we call an IPO, which is flotation on the stock exchange in London. I've actually been through one of those with Agreco before, many moons ago. Very exciting. It obviously was successful for Agreco at the time, and still is. And at the end of the day, this is obviously a lot of work and quite costly, and you need to be at a certain stage to do this, but it is a viable option. And then of course we have private equity. Now, private equity is the big brother of venture capital, and that's where we have investors coming in at the much larger rounds, 10 million plus, 5 million plus. So that's the private equity market, and they're looking for larger profitable businesses at that point in time. And another way that is a potential exit is that there's a management buyout. So the leadership team decide that they want to buy the company back and they buy the investors out. So there's lots to consider there in terms of exits. Next slide, please. So that's been a sort of whirlwind overview of VC in general, what's involved. And just to tell you a little bit more about Kiro now. So what do we actually offer? We're quite unusual in the fact that we offer operational support. And we found that this has been really well received by some of our very early stage companies that we've invested in. And when I say operational support, I mean that we offer back office support. So we will actually do the bookkeeping, we will actually do payroll, and we can help with things like following up on grant applications and reclaiming money back and R&D tax credits. And some of these admin tasks that can take a lot of time, therefore costs money. And maybe sometimes these are what you would outsource to a financial support company as well. So we offer all of that. We also help with things like basic HR templates, using the standard ones, just to get companies up and running initially and provide as much support and help as we can. We also, of course, as I've mentioned, we provide people support, so we provide guidance and help as the company goes through different growth phases, in addition to, of course, the capital. And we do really understand the length of time. So we are patient investors. Next, please. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we're a little bit different because we are firstly very aligned with engineering, that being the background of our founders, but secondly, because it is private money that we're investing. So our interests are really truly aligned because it's our own money and not somebody else's money. And we're very selective about the opportunities that we invest in. Also, because of the issue that this is our own money and it's a private fund, we don't require what is often asked for, which is SEIS and EIS. So this is tax incentive scheme that's offered by the UK government. So SEIS is Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, and EIS is Enterprise Investment Scheme. They offer huge tax benefits to investors. So you can get up to 50% back with SEIS as an angel investor and up to 30% with EIS as an angel investor. But Kiro don't require for this. So you have to go through a process to get assurance to be valid for this. So quite often, some companies that are further down the line, you've maybe been in existence 10 years, then you probably wouldn't be relevant for this early stage tax scheme. So Kiro aren't backing SEIS and EIS opportunities because they have a private fund that doesn't require to do that, and they're not looking for investors that are pushing for these tax benefits. So that's another benefit that Kiro has, that we don't require that. And we do understand that this is going to be a journey with ups and downs and twists and turns, and we're comfortable navigating that uncertainty and continual change, especially in these COVID times. Change is a constant now, so that is part of our ethos as well, and we truly understand the journey of founding entrepreneurs. Next, please. So just to quickly talk about the sectors that we invest in and cover. So we are really interested in engineering, manufacturing related technologies, and that is as wide as covering, civil engineering, mechanical engineering, but we also cover materials science. So anything related to new materials, that includes photonics, that includes sensor technology. But what it doesn't include is software. So we're not backing and investing standalone software companies, AI companies, machine learning companies. But if you have what I would call some kind of widget or hardware that has software that goes along with it, then yes, we're still interested, because your sales model is not just based around the software side of things. So, and that's where our expertise lies. So that covers automotive, aerospace, chemical engineering as well, the semiconductor market, electrical hardware, and agri-tech. So that gives you a sort of a flavour. It's not exclusive, but that's just a flavour of the types of opportunities that Kiro invests in. We also invest between 500,000 and 2 million, which is quite early stage for a VC, but we also do follow on as well. So we're keen to go the whole journey with you. And it can be business to business or business to consumer, but it must be UK based. It must have a UK base in order for us to invest. Next, please. And the 6 Ps is our evaluation criteria. And as I mentioned earlier, all venture capital firms have their own process, and we call it the 6 Ps. And we really, what we're most keen on is people and patents, are the two sort of people, product and patents are our top 3. And we really do look for there to be an intellectual property strategy in place before we invest. And usually that would involve having at least a patent filed, or the intention to file a patent in the near future. So we're really keen on IP-based companies investing in the people, the intellectual property and the product. And the product could be really early stage. It can be pre-prototype production, as long as we are happy with the other 2 aspects. We're really keen to get involved with that early stage and go the full journey. Next, please. Oh, that seems to have gone back one. Okay. Oh, it's gone back again. So the final slide was around Microtech, which is one of our portfolio companies, and just wanted to give a little bit of flavour as to the journey with Microtech, what's happened with them, and their story so far. So Microtech Ceramics, they develop advanced ceramics for catalytic converters for the automotive sector, and they have been around since 2018. And they actually are a spin-out company that has come out of Loughborough University. And Kiro has supplied a lot of operational support to Microtech. To date, we've actually funded them 1.55 million, and that's been over a couple of rounds. And that's enabled them to upgrade their lab facilities, to hire new members of staff, and to buy the essential CapEx equipment they require for their R&D development. They are still pre-revenue, and we're actually at the stage now where we're discussing some licensing deals with potential customers. And we've really supported them by, initially we brought on an experienced project manager, and that project manager was able to help map out their technology roadmap, their product roadmap. And in addition to that, we've helped them with IP management. We've helped them with the operational support in terms of payroll and the financial administration. We've helped them achieve £170,000 in R&D tax credits. We've supported their grant claims, and more recently we've brought on what you would probably call a CCO, a Chief Commercialization Officer, and we're revisiting the strategy going forward. So we make these introductions, and we don't charge anything for those introductions. We just help them find the right people, and then they join the company. So yeah, that's a quick whirlwind tour of one of our portfolio companies. Next, please. Yeah, and that's it. I think that's probably enough from me, and I would be happy to answer any questions about the world of VC investment.
Thanks, Gillian. That's fascinating as usual. I used to, when I was in the university sector, think about startups and spin-outs and how terrifying the whole experience must be to have to go and pitch to with a view of Dragon's Den type investors peering at you from an aggressive position. But I think anybody that's listened to that presentation will realise that this is a group of people who are very supportive of and looking to support investors with good ideas, with markets to where they can be applied. There are a couple of comments in the chat box. Don't be shy. Sometimes we get a shy audience, which is why I sometimes make up a few questions in advance. And I'll kick off Well,
Kareen's got her hand up, Patrick.
Oh, has she?
Yep.
Thank you. Kareen, go on then.
Thanks, Joe,
Thank
for
you for the
spotting
comment.
me. Thanks, Gillian. Sorry, I was a bit late getting into that, was on another call, but was just interested in the portfolio. I'm working with a client at the moment that's got one of those sort of projects that is a hardware stroke software project, but it's focused potentially in this sort of defence area to do with trying to think how much I can say about it, but it's sort of an anti-drone product based in Scotland. Would that potentially be something that you would, look at?
Yeah. So it involves hardware as in a flying drone and the software to go with it.
Well, not a drone per se. It's anti-drone, so it's aimed at protecting premises and places where you don't want drones. So the classic example being the airports over the last few years, where things like they were closed down because there was a drone flying around. So it's hardware and software to identify and neutralize, if I put it that way, not explode it, but neutralize the threat. And they're just it's tried and tested. It's at the launch stage, and they're again just needing that capital to keep them going at the moment and to do some more development. And I just think it could be a nice fit potentially.
Yeah, I mean, well, please point them in direction of our website and they can check the criteria there.
Yeah.
And then, happy to have an initial chat with them.
Super. Thanks very much for that.
Thanks for that, Kareen. Sorry I missed you. Anybody else I can't see anybody else in the audience with their hands up at the moment. There's a +2 sign at the top of my screen. Don't know if there's anybody hidden in there that has. But when I promoted this a few weeks ago, I quoted the Forbes article, which made a number of comments. First of all, it said there's a dearth of investors in the manufacturing sector. It's hard to fund a manufacturing startup. It's never easy to get funding generally, and this is probably especially true for manufacturing startups. Gillian, do you think it's hard for manufacturing to find investment? And if that's the case, why is that?
So I think possibly because the use of the word manufacturing covers so many different sectors, it tends to be, certainly in the VC world, they tend to be more specific about the sector, as in, would it be aerospace or would it be automotive? Is it manufacturing for what sector? Manufacturing is very all-encompassing. But there are lots of investors out there, and I think in Scotland we can sometimes be a little bit blinkered, and we there is so many venture capital firms south of the border, and we tend not to think about that. There is a lot of investment out there, really, is what I'm trying to say. And last year alone, there were more investments done than any other year. It actually has increased during lockdown. And perhaps that is because companies are starting to think outside the box and realise that perhaps they need to go and look at alternative sources of finance to grow and scale. Kiro are perhaps a little bit different in this respect, in that they've acknowledged there is a gap in the market there, and they had the same problem themselves, the founders, which is why they specifically have set up this fund. But we also work with other partners, so if it's not the right fit for Kiro, we share good opportunities amongst the groups. So I would strongly advise to approach, even if you think it's not quite the right fit by what they say in their blurb, that I would strongly advise to approach a venture capital firm that potentially might be the right fit. So I guess in answer to your question, Patrick, I think that is changing. It's definitely changing. It's a bit like access to finance for women. It's changing slowly but surely, but it's changing.
Thanks, Gillian. Thanks. Before I bring Joe in, he's got a comment in there about the type of organisation that Seed is and how it can help create peer-to-peer networks, and what you perceive the value of those are when encouraging investment in a company. Chrissy, who's left us now from DigiLoop, has commented she's definitely interested in exploring investment, and agrees with Joe's assertion. I'll bring you in a bit later, Joe, on that. I'm looking for more questions. I'll give you another one of mine that we talked about earlier. So you mentioned use of funding.
Sorry, I think there's a hand up there, is there not?
That's Dave Nicholson from Seed. Dave, sorry.
Gillian, yeah, my background is banking, so my question is coming from that side of it. Do you see the VCs as a better way of funding startup businesses than the traditional bank lending?
Yeah, thanks, David. So I think at the end of the day, bank is just the money, isn't it? And you could look at VC funding as a long-term loan, because effectively it is. Instead of getting interest paid back, we look for value to be paid back at the end of the day at a much later date. So in getting your head around, you know, what really is venture capital, I think it's useful to look at it from that angle. But I think the main difference really is that it's the support, expertise, you know, you're getting access to the little black books as well, bringing the right people in. There's so much more support offered with VC money than there is with just a pure bank loan and paying back a set monthly fee with added interest.
Yeah, and that was the other point I was going to make, is from one of your slides, the actual support, the HR bits, the black book, all of the extra stuff you wouldn't get from a £1 million bank loan, for instance.
Exactly. And I think it's the strategic challenging as well. I found I've been investor director on a couple of portfolio companies, and it's the strategic challenging of the CEO, you know, and asking them the right questions. You know, what is round that next corner? Have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? That is really invaluable support that most VCs offer through their board representatives.
Are you involved with Jackie Waring?
No, Mint Ventures is something quite different and quite separate, but I can talk about that, can come on to talk about that, or if we've got time at the end, I'll say a little bit about Mint.
Dave, I think that's right. We're going to invite Gillian to say a few words about it. So thanks for your comment, Dave. And apologies to David Milliken from Scottish Enterprise. You had your hand up first, but you're in that little +2 bubble that I mentioned. So I couldn't see you.
That's okay, Patrick. It was a couple of things. Firstly, just reflecting on Patrick's comment, is maybe one of the reasons why manufacturing, Gillian's quite right, and we still think in sectors in Scottish Enterprise that manufacturing requires maybe a higher capital investment than some other areas. You know, you need equipment, you need premises. I'm thinking back to Gillian's point about software. I could maybe start a software, product in my own room, sitting here at my desk. Whereas if I'm in manufacturing and say aerospace or that, I might need materials or need premises or need equipment. So that in itself is a higher initial capital outlay than some others. So it might go some way to addressing the point that you mentioned there, Patrick. But my question was more about, and it was really interesting to see that the sectors that is Kiero's focus. But from my point of view, it's really just trying to understand it. My interest is we try and get engineering companies interested in diversification opportunities. The fact is a lot of engineering companies, especially in Scotland, we all know, they've been heavily focused towards oil and gas, and how do we transition them out of that and what other opportunities. But unless the company's going to have almost like spin out the diversification as a subsidiary, what kind of support would there be if it's already an established company for the new venture, so to speak?
Yeah. I mean, I know VC does, and angel investment too, does concentrate on the really early stage, but we are keen to support companies that, I mean, they might have been around for 10 years or so, and they're just now thinking of scaling up. And I think that also ties back, David, to the real focus on this SEI, SEIS. Now, you'll probably find that most most investment companies do really focus on this, and if they've been around a long time, then they're not valid for these tax benefits, and I think that's really affecting the industry as a whole. There's maybe not enough investors out there that are going to look at companies that have been around for a while, but we're really keen to support companies that have been around in existence for a while. And in fact, also wearing my Mint Ventures hat, that's women grow their business differently, and they have a different attitude to risk. And we're actually doing an investment in the moment in a company that has been around for 7 years. And I think we need to see more of that, because there are companies there that don't initially think about, oh well, actually now I'm going to scale and grow. They maybe been ticking along quite happy as they are, but as you say, they then realise that, oh, maybe they could diversify and they could actually open up more markets and they could grow and scale. And how are they going to do this? So yeah, I think we need to see more support in terms of investors backing these types of opportunities.
That's good to hear. And as Joe and I have discussed many a time, just because companies have capability, that doesn't necessarily mean that they know the market. So that's one of the things that helps to unlock it. So just because they're used to machining parts for oil and gas doesn't mean they can switch tomorrow. Even though they might have the equipment and they might have the skills, they don't know the market dynamics. They don't know who the buyers are. So therefore, it is a risk there as well, that although they have capability, they don't have knowledge. So that's one of the things that we're trying to look at, you know, getting a lot of companies to have a more broader portfolio of sectors that they work in, rather than just very focused on one area.
That's really good to hear, David. And also, just to your point about the amount that they need to raise, that manufacturing companies need to raise, you know, in terms of having, you know, manufacturing premises, we really try to encourage companies that we invest in to look at, before we spend all that money on CapEx, you know, where could they actually do this? There's a lot of companies in existence that have facilities that certainly aren't fully utilizing them. You know, there may be at half utilization. There's also universities that have, you know, test manufacturing capabilities that could be used better as well. And I remember the Construction Innovation Centre had mapped out, you know, in the whole of Scotland, where all these by different types of sector and applications, where lots of manufacturing facilities are. And I think we need to make better use of that, particularly in the initial stages, because most companies think they have to do it all themselves and they have to build it all from scratch. And actually, they could partner more.
Yeah, don't get me started. There's a lot of kit line doing nothing right now today in Scotland. So that's.
Thanks very much, David. There's an opportunity, Joe, for you to jump in, having been given a prompt.
Yeah, I suppose some of those thoughts continuing from David. I mean, I've done large companies, helping them when there's been another large company with no space, and I've put them in there. My God, with the property lawyers sitting there going, you can't do it, you can't break a lease, this is not the way it works. The laws of physics you can't change. You can change a dot on an I and a cross and a T in a legal contract very easily. I mean, it's, you know, let's not get carried away. But I mean, my passion, and Patrick has joined us, is I think I'm probably not going to get a cup of tea from my better half, who in Scottish Enterprises, David knows, looks after a lot of early stage companies. We don't bring them to the established companies well enough. You know, we're offering fantastic support, you know, either to David or, you know, go and talk to the guys at Volvo or whatever, you know, they'll help them. It just doesn't happen. We're living in a world of convention. What they do is they spend all the time raising money and not actually sorting out some of the problems. And then they offshore too quickly to China, Taiwan or whatever. Yet another problem we can help them with, if not us, other networks. So I think David and I are very aligned. We're looking for ways to break that convention. You know, we need people like yourself to join us in that crusade, so that we actually mix the conversations in a different way. Otherwise, we'll do what we do in Scotland for the last 15 years. Lots of great ideas. They get bought if they're really good, or they just die. I mean, that's what we're trying to change. So if you're up for the challenge, Patrick's supporting me in that. I know David will. We want to do it. So, you know, I'd really like, you know, your views on how a network like us can actually help you, and we can help you back, and, you know, let David and his colleagues hear that, you know.
I think that's a thumbs up, yes. No answer question. So it's a bit unfair to I think, to put Gillian on the spot at the moment. But yeah, I think we should invite you to take more interest in what Seed does, and perhaps some of the other organisations that are supporting companies across Scotland.
Don't give away the competition, Patrick. We want to keep some of that ourselves. We're allowed to do that.
I'm aware that we've passed the end point for the webinar, and I'm going to give Gillian a chance to talk about her new venture, which I think is important and exciting. But I said I'd end on a cheeky question when we talked about this before we started, which is, do you think women are better at investing than men? Some research I read about was that 10-year analysis of women who've invested found that when women do invest, they tend to be successful and even outperform their male counterparts. And I thought we'd ask Gillian to comment on this before we wrap up and say thank you to everybody.
Well, thank you for that question, Patrick. So in answer to your question, it has been proven that over a period of time, women do tend to make better investment decisions than men. But what's really more important is, and what we look for with Mint Ventures, is diversity of thought in decision making. So in the leadership team, we want to see diversity of thought, and that has been proven to be fundamental to ongoing innovation in any company. So just to say a few words about Mint Ventures. So Mint Ventures was launched last year. It is a women-led angel investment club, as Patrick said. And what we're trying to do is to get more women and diverse team companies supported and backed. The biggest barrier at the moment to raising finance is that there's not enough women making the decisions and writing the checks. So the VC industry is more than 90% men. And the angel industry, in Scotland alone, only 12% of angel groups are women members, and all the angel groups want to see this change. So it's not just Mint Ventures, and so we're on a mission to democratise angel investing for women, so they can come and train with us for 6 months, and then once they've completed their training, you can self-certify as an angel investor. Now, it's a complete myth that you have to be rich to angel invest, and that's the message we're trying to get out there. All the other angel groups, there's 22 angel groups in Scotland, and they all require you to be a high net worth to join. We're totally changing that, and you just need to do the 6 months training. There's 4 ways you can become an angel investor, but the lesser well-known way is that you train with an angel group for 6 months and then you self-certify. And we've brought the ticket deal size down to £2,000, and some women spend that on a handbag. So, we're saying come and learn, come and join. And if your investment appetite is more science and technology, then you can filter through and join some of the other angel groups in Scotland. But Mint Ventures invests in those lesser well represented sectors that women tend to set companies up in. So it tends to be food and drink, retail, creative industries, online marketplace technology, and those are the ones that aren't getting on the radar at the moment, because it's more engineering, energy, science based, all the life sciences ones that tend to be doing the circles around the angel and VC groups. So that's in a nutshell what's happening with Mint Ventures, and I do that several days a week, and I also represent Kiro in Scotland, and we, as mentioned previously, we're really keen on finding and sourcing engineering and manufacturing opportunities at any stage of their journey, to support and develop and take forwards.
Patrick, we could join. It's just Bank of Dad for our daughters. I think that's the way that we have to do it.
Yeah. I mean, we say to everybody, let the women in your life know about this. Get the message out. We're about to do a huge rollout event across Scotland. We've got 6 events happening, and if anybody wants to know any more about that, I'd be happy to send you an invitation once we have the dates confirmed. But we are going down to the borders, up to Aberdeen, across to Fife, St Andrews, and Dundee and Glasgow.
Sorry to disappoint the ladies that come to our awards, but it's not just lots of good, attractive men like Patrick and I and David Milliken. There's lots of ladies. So the good news is we're quite diverse, I think, more than I expected. So you may have a few people that you meet over a glass of champagne, Gillian, that you can convert. So please do so.
So before I we'll bring Corinne in. Before I do that, I've said it's a really quite nice segue into some of the things that Seed's getting involved in at the moment. David Milliken commented on there's a lot of kit lying around perhaps being unused. So we've got the Advancing Manufacturing Cluster Builder initiative, which can make its facilities, or the 12 AMCFs make their facilities available to Scottish SMEs at no cost. So that's a way of supporting that. We're supporting the Scottish startups. And the other comment I was going to make was in relation to handbags, and how those of you who were at the Emmis event at the beginning of November would have seen the Rocio handbag, which with the Scottish Leather Group has managed to how would we describe it? Onshore, create a completely high value Scottish product from something which we used to be a requirement to go abroad to find the materials for it. So good plug there for the Advancing Manufacturing Cluster Builder and AMCFs. So to finish up, Corinne.
I just wanted to, well, following on from your handbag discussion as well, just like one of my clients locally, Clyde Leather, again, should be part of that cluster building thing. So they already put leather out to high-end handbag manufacturers, but thought of having something in Scotland doing that's brilliant. But just to say, Gillian, thank you. I got so excited there about your thing about mints, because I've long been around technology companies in the early stages, helping out, whether it's Business Gateway or SE or the Innovation Centre, whatever. And I'd always wanted to get involved in investing, but I'm not the high net worth individual, and it's that fear partly, and partly thinking, oh, that's not for me. So I'm just so excited. So I just had to share that. Sorry.
I would grab Corinne, because she's got a very good son who would be a great asset in the future when he makes it as a top pro, by the way. So maybe not, you know. So that would be a useful.
Maybe Kiro would like to sponsor him. So well, we're so excited about that actually, because the amateur golf rules have just changed, so he can finally get some sponsorship, but it's not going to affect him. But anyway, that's another discussion. Thanks, Joe.
Well, thank you very much for all your feedback. So I think Patrick mentioned he's going to share the slides. So my Kiro email is on there for anyone that wants to get in touch, any further information. If there's anyone that missed today's seminar that would like further information. And I've just put my Mint Ventures in the chat there, my Mint Ventures email in the chat if you want to talk separately about women-led investing.
Thanks very much, Dillian. Seems a good plug.
With David's help and maybe my better half, we could try and push the connection to the video of the recording to some of the other early stage companies that are being supported, just so that they get to see it. You know, that might be a way of doing it. I don't know if you want to back me on that, David. We'll give it a go.
Yeah, no, I think it's been really useful, and as I said before, I think for some people the whole term, venture capitalist gets quite scary for them to think, and what's been really useful for Gillian is to sort of demystify some of that. It doesn't have to be all about losing control. So, sometimes people assume rather than find out.
Exactly. Yeah, it's an educational piece. And happy to be involved in further educational pieces. I don't think it's something Kiro can do on their own, but working with Scottish Enterprise and Seed and partners, just as you say, it's demystifying. We're not dragons, and we are approachable, and we're all after the same objective at the end of the day. We all want to see companies grow and scale particularly within Scotland and within this engineering and manufacturing sector.
Well, thanks, Gillian. As I was saying, I think we've got something like 5 or 6 HEIs, universities across Scotland, in Seed membership at the moment, and some FEIs. Perhaps, with your permission, we can share your details and this presentation with those universities, who I'm sure would benefit from understanding some of the tips and tricks about investing. But we'll talk to you offline about that. So, thanks very much for doing this. I thought it was great. I hope the audience did too, and see you next month, I guess.